Formula One, explained for rookies. If you just started watching Formula One, the sport might be very confusing for you. For example, why does every race last differently? Why can't a driver finish a race with the tires he started on, etc.? Well, you're lucky that you found this video, as we're going to explain everything there is to know about Formula One and the terminology that revolves around this sport. So stick around with us until the end of this video, as we're going to dive deep into the most basic stuff that people need to know about Formula One. The sport has officially been founded in 1950, as Ferrari is the most successful team in Constructors and Drivers' Championships. However, over the course of time, cars have changed a lot. Most of the changes have been driven by fatal accidents or frequent unpleasant stuff. For example, one of the main reasons why the halo, a safety system that is crucial in saving the life of the driver, along with the roll hoop over his head, was invented and implemented in the sport, was the accident of Jules Bianchi in 2014, which eventually led to his death in 2015. Now let's start with the most basic questions and the ones that can be answered in the simplest way. First, you've probably noticed that not every race lasts the same number of laps, and the answer to this question is purely logical. Not every race has the same length, or more specifically, every circuit has a different length. Based on the length, the FIA has decided on how many laps should be driven at that circuit. The number of laps and the length of the race are not proportional. More precisely, the longer the circuit is, the shorter the number of laps is. Another question might pop into your head, and that is, why do drivers enter to change tires? And why is it taking so slow to enter and exit the pit stop, but so fast to change the tires? One by one, we'll answer you. First, there is a process in F1 called tire degradation. This happens due to different reasons. One of the most common ones is the track temperature. The higher the temperature is, the more rubber degradation happens. With bigger tire degradation, there is less performance from the car, as the tires aren't providing enough grip in entering the corners or achieving high speed on the straight lines of the track. This is why the driver needs to change his tires during the course of the race, as F1 is a sport that truly optimizes performance and not preservation. If there is rain on the track, the driver can finish the race with the tires he started the race with. However, in dry conditions, the driver is obliged to change his tires at least once. When a driver enters the pit stop, he puts his car in a pit stop mode, meaning that the car cannot overpass 80 km per hour when it's in the delta. Depending on the track, this limit can vary, but it's usually around 60 to 80 km per hour. This is done because of the safety of the team members that sit alongside the pit stop delta, giving commands to the drivers on track. The tire changing process is a fast one, as it's a multiple man job, and usually it's done under 2.5 seconds. You've probably noticed the lines that are present on the tire's side that is in 5 colors: yellow, white, red, green and blue. The latter two have patterns on them, and these tires are used when there is rain on the track. The patterns inside them allow the rain to run away from the tire and therefore optimize the performance of the car. Why are there two compounds for rainy weather? Good question. The first is called intermediate tires, and they are put on when the conditions on the track are changeable. A track is usually 4 to 5 kilometers long, and if there is rain on one side, there might not be rain on the other part of the track. Or the rain itself might be a very light one, which is why intermediate tires are used. The full wet compound is when the track is soaking in rain, as the patterns here are more vivid and have a better way of functioning. The other 3 types of tires are called soft, medium and hard compound tires. They are divided by the compounds they are made of, as the softest one provides the highest speed but degrades faster and needs to be changed quicker compared to the other two. The reason why it provides better performance is that it takes less time to put heat in the soft tires compared to the medium and hard compound tires. However, the medium and hard compound tires are more resistant to degradation due to the nature of the rubber and the other compounds they are made of, meaning they are more resistant and can be used for a longer stint on track. Let's dive into the financial part of this video, which is, how much is an F1 team worth? That purely depends on the team's performance and their position in the championship. For example, Mercedes and Red Bull are much more worthy than Williams and Haas due to the nature of their performance and their cars, making them a highly attractable market for investors. Which brings us to our next part: How do F1 teams make money? Well, the FIA pays the teams depending on where they finish at the end of the season in the Constructors' Championship. Another way how F1 teams make money is through sponsors. You've probably noticed that the drivers' suits and cars are full of stickers from different companies. All of these companies have paid a massive amount of money so that their name can be advertised in the most prestigious racing sport in the world. F1 teams then use this money to improve their cars, pay salaries, and other stuff. We're still holding on to the money topic, and one couldn't help but wonder, how much is an F1 car worth? Well, we hope that you're sitting comfortably while you're watching this video, because the sum might make you dizzy. The total F1 car cost is estimated at a whopping $12.20 million, as the chassis only is worth around $650,000 to $700,000. These cars are optimized to perform at the highest level, meaning that the technology involved in an F1 car is at its peak. When it comes to running a car, you've probably noticed that when the pit stop happens, the crew members don't refuel the car. And this is a car that goes more than 300 kilometers per hour, so fuel consumption is huge, right? Well, before 2010, cars used to be refilled with fuel in the pit stops, but this was banned due to a part of efforts to reduce costs and increase safety. Now cars are pre-fueled with the right amount of fuel prior to the beginning of the race, and they have to provide a 1-liter fuel sample when the race ends. One of the most important questions for you would probably be, how does an F1 car work? You only see the driver's head and you listen to the sound the engine makes, but how does a driver make this miraculous engineering piece work? Stay where you are, because we're going to explain the basics of an F1 car. We are taking the 2022 piece of a car because the F1 sport is always going under changes, with the 2022 regulations being the most recent ones, and the next ones are set for the 2026 season. The 2022 car uses a ground floor effect, meaning that it uses its floor to gain downforce. Downforce is good for the car because it makes the car increase its speed based on the phenomenon of aerodynamics. The whole car is built around aerodynamic surfaces just to emphasize this phenomenon. The 2022 car uses a 1.6-liter V6 engine with a hybrid component, a regulation that was changed in 2014. Previously, the F1 cars used 2.4-liter V8 engines. The driver is more or less in a laying position with 2 pedals in the car, the throttle and the braking pedal. Changing gears is done manually on the steering wheel, with the engine being located at the back of the driver. The driver also has a drink there, so whenever he feels thirsty during a race, he can push a button on the steering wheel and a drink will be dispersed into his mouth by a tube. Now let's cover some terminology that you probably met in F1 but have no idea what it means. We'll start with DRS, or drag reduction system. This system is located at the rear wing of the car and it allows more air to pass through the rear wing, therefore increasing the downforce and reducing the drag. It opens in qualifying sessions and racing when the drivers are less than a second away from the driver ahead of them. The DRS gives a significant advantage to the 2022 cars, given the fact that they weigh more now and are narrower. Slipstream is another thing you've probably heard, and it's a phenomenon that is created by a driver ahead. Think of it like this. The driver who is ahead of you is punching a hole in the air so that you can pass in an area with much less resistance. This is mostly used in qualifying sessions, as the less superior driver is used to create slipstream for the most dominant driver, with the less superior one sacrificing his time for this to happen. An undercut is also a frequent term used in F1, and it's a strategy where the driver makes a pit stop a few laps earlier than the car ahead of them in order to pass them at a later point in the race. This ensures the driver who stops first has a fresher set of tires than his opponent, who is running slower lap times due to being on older, worn tires. Back markers are the drivers that are being overlapped, meaning that they are already more than a lap behind the driver who overlaps them. They aren't allowed to fight and are obliged to just release the speed and make space for the drivers to pass them. Porpoising, which is a very actual thing in 2022, is a phenomenon caused by the new regulations where the car bounces when it reaches a certain speed due to the air stalling beneath the car. It happened this year because the cars are using the floor much more compared to last year to generate downforce, and the teams had a hard time finding a solution for this phenomenon. We hope that you enjoyed our video, and if there is any terminology or questions you might have regarding this matter, feel free to comment below.